Welcome in to the Husker247 Podcast. I'm Michael Bruntz. Brian Christopherson joins me over there. Yesterday, we were talking lots of Kenny Minchey. We're going to start with Kenny Minchey again today for different reasons. Brian, right after Nebraska basketball was finishing up its win over Ohio State on the road, we learned that Kenny Minchey is also hitting the road and going to Kentucky and signed with Kentucky. So Nebraska, the portal class without a quarterback now. What do you make of all this? It's it was a tumultuous couple hours there, I think, for the fan base after basically learning on Sunday that Minchey was officially the guy and now is no longer the guy.
We already knew there were no guardrails to this, right? Like,
Yes.
I mean, that's not a news flash. But I would say probably in this case, a fair-minded person would say Nebraska got done dirty on it because it was a situation where no, it wasn't signed, but you had an agreed upon deal. He was going to come to town, and there was a no contact clause on his portal information. Of course, we know how that stuff works, and obviously how it worked in this case. And it seems like Kentucky opened up the checkbook. I would say it's probably somewhat like also, Kentucky, maybe it's how you want to allocate your resources. Maybe they were willing to spend way up here for this guy who hasn't been a starter yet at this level. And Nebraska's like, I don't even know that Nebraska got a chance to respond to it. It was just sort of done all of a sudden. Like it was like, oh, he's committed to Kentucky. And oh yeah, like 10 minutes later, he signed with Kentucky. So I think it was just a kind of a tough deal for Rule and his program where I know there's a lot to pick at right now. But I think mostly this is just a bad optics thing as opposed to like a Nebraska misplay, if that makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's sort of we have a weird system, and this was a case where you got screwed by the weird system.
Feels like it was definitely a situation with Kentucky where they're waiting on a decision from Leavitt. He's still making visits. Like I think you're kind of to the point now in the portal dominoes at quarterback where you're not really able to wait. Like, and I think that's kind of what happened from their point of view was, you were kind of going down your list, and all of a sudden, Kenny Minchey's the guy, or at least they're not willing to wait on a decision from Leavitt, or at least it was trending away or whatever. And that's how you end up with, coming well over the top of what Nebraska was offering. It's an interesting kind of thought process here, I guess, in terms of how you kind of allocate your quarterback room, because Nebraska's got TJ Lateef in there right now. They probably need to add 2 to that room.
Mm-hmm.
How you kind of make that happen while also, you're saying that you're going to have a competition in the spring. Well, also, how you kind of pay for things has to reflect that there's a competition going on there.
Exactly.
And I think that's the other piece of it from Kentucky's point of view is you can more or less promise the starting job.
Yep.
Or I don't know how willing Nebraska was to do that, right or wrong.
No, you nailed it with that point. Like you can't, if you just open up the bank to like, $3 million or something for a QB, it's sort of, at least the perception is this really a competition, which is what they really want with Lateef, and Kentucky's maybe able to go the other way with that. Not to mention they have a new head coach in Will Stein, who's going to be known as an offensive guy coming over. He wants to make a splash that they've got that thing rolling. So they're probably willing to, a little desperate themselves, I'm guessing, because of what you laid out with the Leavitt stuff, to like, okay, we just got to go all in on this, and rules or tags on a portal profile be damned. We're going to go get him. And who's going to do anything about it? It's like there are no rules.
The kind of interesting part now, to spin this forward a little bit, Nebraska is back in the portal market, or the quarterback market, excuse me. Kind of a list of 4 that we're working off of. I don't know if you I don't know if do you see if anybody else just is kind of leaning towards getting in a little bit, quarterback wise. I don't know if you put your feelers out there, but if you're Nebraska, you're all of a sudden a little bit in Kentucky's situation where you're maybe not looking for, your bona fide starter, but that list is getting a little bit thinner as guys kind of come off the board. And you're kind of back to square one in some ways, but there's obviously some names out there. Probably the most interesting to me is, Anthony Calandria from UNLV, but who else you wrote on the site a little bit. Let's talk through that list a little bit and kind of where Nebraska goes.
I mean, I'm not that educated, but I would say it's an educated list, not just throwing names against the wall. Some of them are pretty obvious for this position Nebraska's in, but aside from Calandria, Bo Pribula, Pribula, I missed Pribula from Missouri. Maybe we'll get to know that really well pretty soon.
Yeah, we'll
I don't know. He's an interesting guy. Started his career at Penn State behind Aller for 2 years. Then he went to Missouri for a season. His numbers aren't overwhelming, but he got coached well with that staff. He threw for 1,941 yards, had a 67.4% completion percentage. I expect you to remember all this.
Jeez, you're dialed in.
It was I have it right here, and it was 11 TDs and 9 interceptions, which some people won't like the look of that. He did run for 297. He can run it a little bit. He's a tough kid. He had the dislocated ankle. Those who follow all of college football closely might remember, and he came back and played the last 2 games despite like that month-long injury, which I do think says something about a guy in this day and age, like in late November when he maybe knows he's going to go in. I don't know if he knew at that point, but you might be thinking you're going to go in the portal. And he was still grinding for his team. So he's one guy. And, Aiden Childs was like the popular name that was just thrown out there before Minchey, and obviously Nebraska's got a good scout on him. He can run it. He's been kind of erratic with his throw game. I think we kind of saw the worst of Childs in Lincoln, which maybe adds some to the perception of what Husker fans, they got after him. He was a 1 QB in Nebraska, actually, I thought rattled his cage a bit, and it wasn't really Child's fault. The thing I do remember about him in that game was I thought he was really tough, Bruntz, and how he kept coming back from the hits, and he had a couple scrambles which were great, like where he extended a play that shouldn't have been anything and kind of made something out of nothing. So, and then I guess Lagway was the fourth name I threw in there. I think he's, to me, would be further down the list because I feel like you're just going full like back into what you just were, right, with Lagway. And that's not to say, like, I mean, there would be like a lot of juice around it. Like people would be all back into that, like just because he was such a high profile recruit, right? So there would be a lot of attention. Oh, Nebraska got Lagway. How's that going to go? But I have him further down on my list, but maybe Nebraska doesn't. We'll see who ends up actually visiting.
So Childs, I believe, is at Northwestern today on a visit. Calandria was at Georgia Tech recently. He was also at Florida State. Florida State, I believe, has been crystal balled for a different quarterback. So that's kind of the pool that Nebraska's swimming in right now in terms of what's out there.
You probably have to pay more, right? I mean, that's the thing. Like you could end up with as good or a better quarterback than you had. Nobody knows. Like we're going to have to see what Minchey does at Kentucky. And like if they get Calandria, people are going to be pretty juiced up about it. I think any of the guys I mentioned, especially the first 2, I think that were mentioned, I think people will be like rally behind the idea of it at some point, but you're going to have, it probably changed their financial big picture game plan.
Yeah, no, I mean, what Matt Rule always says, the desperate team sets the market. It feels like Nebraska's maybe trending that way a little bit more than what they were 24 hours ago. So That'll be, and I mean, I expect it to happen quickly. I mean, you basically have a lot of these quarterbacks going from place to place day after day, so it's not going to be like a long wait here, I don't think, or at least it shouldn't be for the first guy. And I mean, if you get that first guy, then you kind of reset things a little bit, and you go find somebody that's maybe coming up from the D2 ranks, FCS, a long time backup at the power four level. I mean, that kind of third quarterback is interesting to me to add to that group. But we'll see. I mean, it's Nebraska, I think, kind of got shaken up a little bit with the way things played out. Anything else quarterback wise before we start talking about?
No, you got
trees?
most of it. I think we got most of it. That it's just such an interesting dynamic because you're trying to bring it. You need two more, like you say. You want to keep Latif here too. That's the big part of it. Like you don't have much of a safety net there. I just think with you got to go get the best you can at this point and just let whatever happens fall where it may after that. And then that like third quarterback, that's where you're just going to have to, I think, try to find like a gem, like someone at this point, like a real diamond that no one else is really looking at as closely as you.
Go to Ferris State. They just produce quarterbacks up there, from what I understand. So
yeah.
Beyond the quarterback news yesterday, an important defensive ad that probably got lost in the shuffle a little bit. Owen Chambliss, the linebacker from San Diego State, he hopped in and said he's going to be a Husker. Things have been trending that way for a while, but there was, Texas was kind of swimming around a little bit. He was hearing from some other schools, but Nebraska, obviously with the connections to Rob Orich, was always there for him. That's a big one in my mind. Obviously, defensive line is a really key piece of what Nebraska needs to get done, but maybe not talked about as much was the work that you had to do at linebacker in the portal this time around. Chambliss was extremely productive last year in Rob Orich's defense. You have Vincent Shavers coming back as kind of your one veteran guy, and some younger backers that you feel okay about, but might not be ready to go this year. So getting some production and a veteran linebacker with 2 seasons left of eligibility, that's pretty big.
Yeah, and I don't know that they're done at linebacker. Don't think they are. So, I mean, that's obviously a position they prioritized. And, whenever you get, we always think of it with head coaches, but it's the same with coordinators. When you get a hire like Orich, you are, along with just the lift you want him to bring as like a teacher and a planner and a scheme setter for your defense, you're kind of hoping that he brings like three or more guys with him that he's able to diagnose that can play at this level and be havoc makers. And I think Chambliss in that way, some people will kind of fly over this one, but I think he was one of the bigger guys that you could have got, from that defense. He had 110 tackles, 9.5 TFLs, 4 sacks. So that's the thing we talk about Nebraska's, third down in the red zone, not being able to make those plays like in the bowl game. You're hoping a guy like Chambliss is sort of that difference maker in moments like those.
They didn't have enough of those this year.
No, I mean, you need more than him, of course, but like there's one. And so, keep stacking them up, but I think that's a pretty good get, and it's hard to argue otherwise.
Tree Babalade, right before we turn the mics on, he was announced as in for Nebraska. Offensive tackle from South Carolina, had visited over the weekend. Second offensive line ad. As much as we're talking about the quarterbacks, I think a lot of attention needs to be focused on the offensive line and what they're doing there and how they're improving things there for Jeep Wade and Lonnie Teasley. Productive tackle when he was in there. PFF said he only gave up 1 pressure on about 200 pass rush snaps. That's a decent batting average. So what do you kind of make of the work they've done on the offensive line so far, where you have a couple of veterans coming back, but you needed to add some impact guys and really kind of built up that right side of the offensive line in the last 24 hours.
Well, we talked about him yesterday. So you have Brendan Black and Tree, and they were both weekend visitors. So obviously they were prioritized as top sort of guys on that board. Brendan Black has all the experience. That's like more than 2,100 snaps at the college level. He could possibly pop right into where Spindler was at right guard. There's going to be, you got to get him on the grass, and guys like Gunnar Gatula are going to have a say in things and all that. But Tree on the surface has played both left tackle and right tackle this last year. I think he started 5 or 6 games at right tackle. He had he had decent numbers. If you go by the PFF stuff, it doesn't like knock you over. I said off air, it reminds me a little bit, without as much hype, of Elijah Pritchett and sort of his maybe trajectory, where you see like the possibilities of him. It's just, you need that maybe one more year of development. And this is where you, as a Husker fan, I know everybody's like sort of skeptical of everything, but you got to give the new coaches a shot. And like Lonnie Teasley was up close watching this guy for the last few years, and you got to kind of trust his scout a little bit on this as a guy who's a good recruiter, and seeing how he could possibly help this O-line right now. He has 2 years to play.
That's a good place to start. Like you said, I mean, the one thing that Nebraska hasn't really had to this point, with a lot of the new coaching hires are coaches that are kind of bringing their guys with them, and I think that's helpful in the portal era, where if you're basically, you're Rob Orich, you're starting with Chambliss. They had a couple defensive backs in from San Diego State that I think they're in a good spot with. That kind of gives you a little bit of momentum, and finding guys that fit your system or that you're really familiar with, that know you. I think that familiarity really just is kind of priceless in some ways. When you're talking about recruitments, there are a matter of hours rather than like months, like they are out of high school. So you think Nebraska still is going to be doing work on the offensive line? Like, I don't think they're done yet there.
I don't either. I think they could add another one or two. They had feelers out and a visit planned with a younger guy who played at Montana. Name's escaping me right now, but he committed to Iowa State on his visit there. So yeah, I think they keep pushing and perhaps add another. I think that's a good start, and on the surface, they all make sense. The two guys they brought in, you don't want to overdo it. It's hard to with the line play. It's not like we've sat there and watched the all 22
all 2,000 snaps.
Yeah, of Brendan Black and what he brings to the table. But Black was a constant starter since he was a freshman for Matt Campbell, and that kind of stands out too. And then, like I said, you got to sort of trust, like, Lonnie Teasley and Jeep Wade have options as far as guys they know from their programs that are all over the portal. And so to me, it says something that Tree was a first guy that was brought in, and he's committed, and here you go. Like that obviously says they think he's got a lot of potential to him.
Anything else portal wise that has anybody committed in the last 5 minutes? Decommitted? Anybody? No.
I don't. Yeah. I'm sure after this, whenever this runs, there's going to be new information. But I think there's, like you mentioned, there's 2 safeties from San Diego State that I think could go Nebraska's way. Will Hawthorne's a guy to keep an eye on, who played. I don't know that he played. He redshirted maybe at Iowa State last year, but Nebraska loved him last recruiting cycle, and I could see him. Dexter Foster is another. I think he had a visit to Clemson planned. But I could see that trending Nebraska's way. So I think those are some of the names right now that might raise their hands, and that's the first wave basically. And now let's see what that second wave produces.
Speaking of waves, Nebraska basketball continues to ride the wave. The undefeated wave, 15-0. Winning just kind of a grinder on the road at Ohio State last night. That's 2 straight games that Nebraska's had to win games that were not rock fights, but they were like 40-minute slugfest. And that coming in, that was kind of what Ohio State had been comfortable doing. I mean, all the games that they'd played were close. Even the games that they lost were kind of that way as well. What did you kind of take away from last night's effort from Nebraska as they continue to roll and we continue to hear national folks wondering if Nebraska basketball is for real, Brian?
They just however the game gets rerouted, however each time on the floor, maybe it takes on a different path than you expected it was. It doesn't rattle them at all. And so I don't have the numbers in front of me. Yeah, I do.
Give me some numbers.
I mean, Sanford was 3 of 11. Mass was 5 of 14. Mass was 1 of 6 from 3. They weren't shooting it well. I thought they at times looked like they had some tired legs, but yet the constant is Nebraska's defense is legitimately like a workhorse for this team that makes the other team stress and really have to deal with active hands and guys flying around. And I could tell early on that, and that was what I was skeptical of going into this game. Would Nebraska have the legs on defense or have that juice? And it wasn't as dynamic as it was against Michigan State on that end of the floor, but they're really good on that end of the court. And Nate Lenzer, you just got to give him a lot of credit for the planning he has and the way he teaches it and the way guys buy into it. And then you've got Fred with certain sets on the offensive end, sort of, I think at times in big moments carving teams up. Like at the end when they go to Frager, they just isolate him, Frager on a one-on-one, and they trust their freshman to go make that play. And he sort of just out leveraged or battled his way to the goal to get the bucket plus the foul in the play of the game. And then you have a moment before that where Sam Hoiberg is flying across the court just to tip the ball out to Sanford, who was cold, but hits that 3. He didn't let the other shots, had he been freezing previously, affect that one, and he knocks it down. And they just are very good about having a goldfish memory too. If a guy's hasn't had things go his way for 5 minutes, he doesn't let that affect how the next 5 minutes can go.
At the start of the year, I mean, like, how far over the ceiling are we of what you would have expected Frager to be coming off of a redshirt year?
Oh, pretty far, don't you think? Like,
yeah,
I mean, way over compared to like when, and this is a compliment to him, but when he was a high school senior, my true opinion was like, I don't know about this one. That was like what I thought. And it's perhaps the past. I've seen some in-state guys going way back, like when I was in college, even, that are stuck in my brain where it just didn't happen. And then he redshirts, and in this day and age, when a guy redshirts, Bruntz, you're kind of like, oh, I don't know what's really there. But you heard all offseason, like, this kid is just not afraid of anything. He'll take whatever shot is there and have confidence he's going to make it. He's a better shooter than people know. That's the thing that shocks me the most is his shooting. Like, I thought maybe he'd be that like high flyer around the rim and do some of that stuff, but he's a dang good shooter. Like, he's a legitimate weapon that the other side now has to recognize can hit a big shot at any moment. And when you add that to the element that he can drive it like he does, if he keeps going, he can build a case to be the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. I mean, he's one of the more elite guys that are younger guys in this league.
I feel like I seem to remember having the discussion back towards the start of the year that it was like he needs to be something like Juwan Gary, like that type of a role. And I guess to me, that would be more of like the junkyard stuff, finishing around the rim. Like, I guess there's a finish and finesse to his game that I think has developed over the last year or so that maybe I wasn't expecting, coming into the year. And I think that's been kind of like the shooting part of it for sure. But I think he just has a really good feel around the rim that's not just, bullying like he did this last night, but at times this year, he's just got really good feel around the rim and finishing too. I mean, I think that's been the thing that's kind of stood out about him.
And he will go clean up on the glass for you. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
he goes after it. And that's the thing. If you want to lay out like 3 bullet points of this team, like last night, they only gave up 4 offensive boards
Yeah.
and just 2 second chance points. And even the Michigan State game, they were out rebounded by 14, and Hoiberg kind of laughed about it in the post game because he felt good about it. And I understand why, because they did exactly what they wanted to against a rugged rebounding outfit. And they were only outdone 11-8 on offensive rebounds against Michigan State. And people will remember like 4 of them came on like one play or, with a minute and a half left. And so Nebraska was basically even for most of the game there. So that's a big change, because think about like past Husker teams where they've maybe gone on the road and been outboarded by like 15 or 20 against like Rutgers back in the day.
Well,
Like,
Illinois, they did.
yeah,
They got crushed on the glass against
yeah.
Illinois. They still won, but I mean that's a huge difference from
Mm-hmm.
less than a month ago.
Yeah, but even this year, that's a big jump for them. But you're getting it from Frager. Hoiberg had 9 rebounds. Sam Hoiberg, I mean, he's fearless about going in there and getting it. And so you have guys that are really committed to that cause of somehow, some way coming away with the ball. And I think that's been something that's probably underappreciated about this team.
So Nebraska, that was their 4th quad 1 win, I believe.
They're at 4 now, yeah, and they have a chance at 5 at Indiana Saturday. And I was, last time we talked, we're like, oh, this is a tough week. But that's the thing. This is the 3rd week going in where it's like, oh, if they could just split, like that's sort of been my mindset. 3 different weeks I've said that. Haven't lost yet. There's got to be a point where you almost retire that kind of talk.
It's funny to me though. It's like every time it's like you cut back to like the Peacock Studios or the Big Ten Network Studios, and it's the same conversation they've been having for the last 3 weeks. It's like at some point, with as many like high major wins as they have, like you probably need to at least allow it to enter the conversation that Nebraska is an okay basketball team, right?
Doesn't through it all too. I'm interested what you're reading on this is. Doesn't it seem whenever Fred Hoiberg talks or whatever about this team and like what they're doing, he expects this. Like I think he still comes off as that guy who's pretty fresh off. Like, I did this at Iowa State.
Yeah.
There was like a hiccup here, obviously they got in the ditch a little bit the first 3 years. There's a variety. That's a whole thing, but they redirected it. And he comes off very much to me like everyone else is kind of going crazy, about like, oh, can you believe this? You beat Michigan State. I think he's built the way where he's like, that's what we are supposed to do. That's what I do. Like I've coached in the NBA. I'm a big time, like, this is what our program is going to be like. And I think that's genuine from him. That's how it comes off.
No, I think that's true. I think there's value in having, like, for his, all over the place as his tenure's been at Nebraska. There's a value in, I think, in a for a program like this, having a coach that's kind of been through that before, because it feels a little less magic carpet righty. Like, I think over there in the facility within those walls, I'm sure they're thrilled to be a top 10 team, but I've not gotten the sense from, the little I've been around them, but, press conferences and things that I hear that there's this, like, they're holding on, white knuckling over there.
Yeah.
Like even last night, I mean, the listening to Hoiberg on the radio, I think his kind of just personality of, people are losing their minds that they beat Ohio State on the road. And he gives like a very succinct, like 3-minute answer about how the entire game went. Mm-hmm. And there's just, okay. And now, we've got Indiana on the road. Like, we got to get home and rest and whatever. And I think that was even, after the Michigan State game, it was the same way. It's like, okay, yeah, we beat them, but you got to get ready for a 2-day prep to go to Ohio State. It was the same way after they beat Creighton with Wisconsin coming in there. Like it's very, there's a very kind of like calmness in how methodical he is. I think Reek Mast is kind of the same way personality wise. Jamarcus Lawrence is a veteran guy who gets that. Like, I think that's, I don't know. There's like a storm kind of brewing outside of excitement, and inside they're just like, we're resting.
Inside they're like, we're good. Like they know they're good. Like other people might think they're under the radar guys. If someone thinks Rink Mass is an under the radar, that guy is one of the best weapons in college basketball. I mean, just like with all he can do. And the truth of it is, Sam Hoiberg has become one of the better weapons out there. I mean, just when you look at his stat line and how much he does, and you named off Lawrence, and he's gotten a lot better. So Price Sanford is more than people gave him credit for, probably as like a behind the arc, just sit there kind of guy. That's not him. He got hammered with 5 minutes left on a drive, and he knocks down the free throws and hits the big shot even on a day when he's cold. So they do just have a real mental toughness. It's obvious. And you do have to give credit. We don't know how it's all going to play out, but we could say this at this point. How they saw this roster and were able to figure out how the pieces could work, you got to give a lot of love to, because probably most people outside the walls never thought they had nailed it like they have. I mean, maybe they thought, they could be all right. They could be on the bubble or something like that. They obviously saw like how each part could work together, and maybe it's worked better than they thought. But I do think there was definitely some recognition how this puzzle could form a pretty nice picture by the end of it.
So Nebraska Saturday, right? To Indiana?
It's an early one. Yeah. It's like one of those YMCA tips. So that'll be a tough game, but Nebraska's also had Indiana's number. I'm sure their fan base, I'm sure, wants payback on Nebraska, because Nebraska's made them look silly the last couple of years. So
I think they're the early Phillips 66 game on Raycom Sports there on Saturday. So be sure to turn in for that one.
Doug Bell's going to lead us in.
Yeah, I like that. Anything else? We a little bit longer. That's all right.
No, I think we covered it.
Okay. All right. We'll have plenty on the site, I'm sure, with everything out of the portal. Brian's got basketball covered, and just keep it locked on Husker 24/7 for all that.